Hey, good morning, girl. Hey, thanks for having the patience of waiting last weekend and not getting a video out. I was busy at the communications conference in Santa Barbara. That's right, the NVC conference in Santa Barbara. And I wanted to just go through some of the content that we discussed last weekend that I thought was notable. Speaking of notability, I did something new. I used my iPad Pro to take notes during my classes, and it went really well. I mean, I was really just sort of blown away about the ease of using this program. The program I used was called the app that I used was called Notability, which is an Apple app that you can use to take notes, and it worked fantastic. I was really pleased with it all. So, well, first of all, happy April 1st, 2019. That's right, it's April Fool's Day. Whoopee! A minor holiday. It's sort of like Pi Day. It's a fun day. It's a fun holiday, and nobody. I, I actually don't have any jokes planned for anybody, or any. So we'll see what happens if I sort of notice anybody joking with anybody else or doing any kind of April Fool's activity. We'll see if anything shows up. Um, so anyway, yeah, the NVC conference was good. I'll tell you, I really love getting together with my friends, seeing them again. It's so meaningful for me to visit with them and to connect with them again. It's just really pleasing. I love that sense of community, that sense of tribe, the sense of belonging, and how we are all sort of advocates of certain values that relate to empathy and compassion and kindness with other people. And I mean, and with ourselves. That's right. We're all advocates for self empathy, and I just really appreciate being around those people. In some respects too, the I know I have a feeling that the people aren't there unless they've suffered probably some kind of emotional or relational hardship. And that's also an aspect with which that I feel sort of in league with them, suffering through difficulties related to communicating with others and our relationships with others. And really sort of we've all also jointly made a decision to act constructively through learning and guidance and meditation and focus, curiosity to find better ways of sort of managing our social environments. And so, I really appreciate everyone who's there because of what they've been through and the decisions that they are making for self improvement, self development, and how they want to conduct themselves in the future. I really think of them as people who are developing virtues and strengths that I admire. Every one of them is a person who I admire. So it's an august group of people who are focused similarly with me in developing new strategies for better relating, because we all have the same needs and wants. I mean, I've got it's interesting how I've got this entire story about who shows up at that conference. I don't think I realized I had such a detailed story about who's at the conference. And I guess that's just part of being in a community, right? Where you've got this joint story where we're sort of all coming from the same place and moving in the same direction together, supporting each other, helping one another, providing tips and tricks and helpful hints, tips, ideas, create a little bit of creativity, problem solving, each helping each other sort of find um, more stability, a better balance when it comes to managing and arranging our social world, right? First of all, our social world is complex. As human beings, we're social creatures and we have big brains. And I have a feeling that these big brains exist primarily because relationships are so tough. There's another aspect of having a big brain, and that is finding food, right? Strategies for putting energy into our bodies. And I'm sure that that is really important for how freaking big our heads are. We got giant brains. But I think that a big part of the need for having giant brains is not just getting food, but I think it's also developing social skills. There's something about there's something about human beings where we're really tuned into even beyond language. I mean, clearly language is social connectedness embodied, right? Objectified. I mean, the very fact that we can read and speak using language, the very fact that we have a language at all, is an indicator of our social qualities, the social qualities that are bound in this brain. I mean, we end up speaking as human beings, a year or two out of the womb. And then we continually speak every day thereafter, as we communicate. And I'm talking about verbally and non-verbally. We're certainly non-verbal communicators as we start off almost immediately. And, it's just, it's part of our survival, right? That at its base is, you know, sort of these social qualities that our brain has instilled in us. Not every animal has as apparent social qualities. Look at lizards and worms. You got to really seek out, the social aspects of what it is to be a worm. I mean, as human beings, we can figure it out because our brains are particularly attuned to social behavior, and we can certainly find it in bees and in ants and in beavers and in other animals pretty readily, dolphins and whales. But yeah, in fact, it's really interesting to learn about how finely attuned our brain is when it comes to social adaptation. And it's also interesting, those people who have developmental disorders like autism who aren't keyed into a lot of social cues, just how debilitating that is in our society. They really struggle to sort of find their way in our society, because it is so social. And it just goes to show, it would, Homo sapiens, we could be renamed like social sapiens. We could be Homo socialis, and that would be also a perfectly good definition of who humans are at our base. So, um, I think being good communicators and developing in our social environment is a big part of just who we are and what we do. It's also a big part of what I do. Anyway, beyond that commentary, let's go to some of my first comments. So, one thing that was quite notable was that there were a few local practice groups for nonviolent communication. A couple, one in San Luis Obispo, maybe one or two in Santa Barbara, one in Ojai, one in Thousand Oaks, Santa Cruz, Long Beach, LA. That was nice. Um, let's see if there's anything here. So there was talk about understanding independence, consequences, being effective. Um, Golly, this was an interesting word, trauma informed. I hadn't heard of that phrase before. Oh, I like this idea of a digital dad came to me, Em. So I was thinking about labeling myself with the moniker digital dad. I wonder what you think about that. How does that strike you? The thing is, I would use it if I thought it would. I think it's kind of a funny phrase, but I also don't want to pigeonhole myself into being only a digital dad. Sometimes through self-labeling, a person can inadvertently sort of create a category and never escape from that category. I don't want to be typecast as a digital dad in the drama of your life, right? Or in your television production. I don't want that to be the role for me from here until the end of time. I would definitely like to be an in-person, face-to-face dad. So I thought maybe I won't use it because I have a feeling that digital dad might be too limiting. It's funny. I've had other ideas like that before, calling myself an E dad or an I dad or something like that. But I don't think that's going to go too far. It is an entertaining idea, though. I like this idea about children learning self regulation through modeling, attunement, belonging, acceptance. Oh, and I like this idea too when it comes to unconditional love. The definition described here is that unconditional love is always attempting to see a person's beauty beneath their beneath their behavior, or at least sometimes the beauty lies beneath their behavior. And I think that's entirely true. Um, I remember someone saying, maybe it was Mr. Rogers, that love was a verb, that it involves action, and it's not merely, and the word love is not just action. It's it's a struggle. It's a continuous struggle to continuously accept another person as they sort of move from behavior to behavior. And I really like that idea. I do think that love is like this continuous struggle to sort of accept a person as who they are, sort of understanding them as perfect no matter what their behavior. And yeah, that's right. Noticing the beauty of who they are, um, sometimes beneath the behavior. That definitely it is a decision that a person makes, I think. Um, in a way, it's a commitment. It's sort of a contract you make with yourself. Um, and it may be more than that. It might not just be a contract. It may not be a contract that you make between, say, yourself and another person, say, like in the vows of commitment for marriage, but it might be just a commitment you make to yourself. It's sort of like, it's very similar to the metaphor of not judging a book by its cover. You know, I think it's important to limit judgment as much as you can, because particularly negative judgment, because often it's just not true. Um, now that I think about it, when there's a behavior, when a person observes a behavior, they are observing. There's like that, the observation, the objective observation of a person's behavior, and then there is that observation from different perspectives. And there are an infinite number of perspectives. That's right, according to certain values, right? You might emphasize one value in one perspective, emphasize another value in another perspective. And, human beings are always trying to conserve a value at one time or another. And, to others, sometimes to observers, it just may not be apparent what values are being preserved at the time. And when it's unknown, quite often people make assumptions, right, about intention, and they can be wrong. In fact, often they are wrong. I think people tend to make, every decision that they make, I think they make because they're trying to do the right thing, right? They're trying to gain or keep something that they need, something they want or desire. Often it's just natural for a person in their situation to want a certain thing. And, here's the thing. Sometimes we don't manage our own emotions well. Sometimes, we've got these sensations and feelings in our minds that drive us to take action. And sometimes the actions we take are thoughtless. They're not strategic. They're not tactical. And, you know, the actions we take don't work. They're ineffective. Sometimes they have the opposite effect that we intend. Um, you know, it's a weakness of the strategy that we use to fulfill the need. And, the effectiveness of the strategy is a function of our planning, ability to plan and conceptualize the problem and the answer. And, not everyone will act the same way in the same situation, and our effectivity will be different. And, you know, the interpretations from outsiders will also be different each time. And I think we need to watch out for simplistic explanations of why people do things. I think it's not altogether certain sometimes why people do things. I think people do things for a lot of different reasons. I mean, when I make the decision, say, to eat breakfast, I'm making that decision, let's say to eat it at 8 o'clock in the morning. I make that decision based on a number of factors, right? There's factors relating to time, factors relating to energy, factors relating to my schedule, factors relating to my environment, factors relating to my own psychology, um, my own skill levels. And it's the decision I make is an integration of a lot of factors. That means I'm adding together a lot of factors, and it's outputting behavior, going to eat breakfast at a certain time, like 8 a.m. And, it's complex. It's a complex integration. It's not simplistic. I think, that's the problem with observers when they observe and try to explain behavior is that, I think they may over focus on some motivations rather than others. I think they also tend to over focus on, say, negative um, motivations, or assumed or ascribed negative motivations. And, it's not always the case. Sometimes you got to dig deeper, give people the benefit of the doubt. That is, what that means is that if you're somewhat doubtful that the intention that you ascribe to certain behavior is the case, is the truth, is correct, then, be willing to reconsider, reconsider your judgment. It just may not be appropriate. It may not be valid. It seems, the thing about it is that really people can only answer for themselves why they perform a certain act or not. And, a lot of the time people are just innocent And what I mean by that is that people do things, the things that they do because that's the way they've been conditioned by their environment. You know, and you know what? That conditioning is not necessarily of their choosing. They grew up in a certain neighborhood, they grew up in a certain family, they have certain economic influences, they run into certain people by chance, certain organizations by chance, certain service people by chance. And we all get this conditioning, and a lot of the times it's just not up to us. you know what lessons we learn and when we learn them. So anyway, what I'm suggesting is sort of a kind of non-accountability people have for their actions. I think theoretically and even practically, there is an argument to be made about non-accountability for people's actions. And so things like blame and punishment just aren't appropriate. They don't make sense. Punishment doesn't necessarily make sense anyway. Often the times, look, punishment only makes sense if learning occurs at the same time. But I have seen many times when punishment is not, when people don't learn from punishment, you know, um, what they may learn to do is how to avoid punishment. Punishment comes with some sort of a intent, and maybe there's a lesson, a sort of implicit lesson to teach another person through punishment, but that message doesn't always get through. Um, you know, punishment doesn't have the effect necessarily that people expect it to have. In fact, sometimes it can have the opposite effect. Sometimes punishment can trigger people to go off the deep end and engage in behavior more furiously than they did before, out of revenge or who knows why. I mean, if you have a meal that you're preparing as a chef, and a large portion of that is spoiled somehow, that decreases your motivation to prepare an amazing meal. If a part of it has been spoiled, and I can imagine if a person's life is spoiled somehow by a system of punishment, designed, with the intent to help someone, that, if it doesn't meet up with a person's vision of their life, what they want in their life, I can imagine just giving up. It's real easy as a human being to just sort of give up. I know because I've been there. When it's apparent that things aren't going well and things appear hopeless, when positive change appears hopeless, sometimes you just go for the ride and try to lose as little as possible. During that experience. And some people struggle with moving on. Anyway, yeah, I'm skeptical about punishment actually working. Now, what works better than punishment is guidance. What works better than punishment is education. Sometimes, even with children, instead of telling a child not to cross the road, maybe you need to show them some videos of kids crossing roads and getting injured as they cross them. It's a teaching moment. And then the kid will realize, oh, that could happen. Otherwise, it's kids sort of operate on faith a lot of the time that their parents are giving them the right guidance. They'll do what their parents says without without even understanding why. And believe it or not, that's not good enough. It's just not good enough. Like if I had a kid and I said, "Don't cross the street except at crosswalks," and they follow that advice, on some level it's great. But if they don't know why that advice is good advice, if they've never thought through the negative consequences of crossing the street at other times and places, then I'm not sure I'd be all that impressed by the obedient behavior. You know, I think obedient behavior just sort of assumes that people understand the lesson behind the rule, and that isn't always the case. In fact, here's the thing about rules is that I've learned is that often people follow them and there's no good reason to follow them. I mean, sometimes they follow them without good reason. In fact, I think that happens a lot of the time. And, maybe you get the benefit of compliance, but you don't get that if you don't have the understanding that comes along with compliance, it's hollow. I think it's rather hollow. Basically, it's thoughtlessness, right? Anyway, I appreciate you paying attention while I think through these ideas. One thing that's on my mind is that I'm going to try to go to the eye doctor today and get my right eye taken a look at. I've been noticing some changes lately in it, and I've got two rather large events going on today. I might have to cancel them both or reschedule them. One of them is a workout today at lunchtime at the gym, and the other is I have a quiz today in my welding class, and I was sort of loath to miss it. We'll see what happens. I hope I can make it to the eye doctor today and get my eye checked out. So that's kind of on my mind lately, how I'm going to schedule my day. Here's the truth. My day is kind of packed. It's packed with all kinds of activity. I read, I go to the gym, I go to night classes, I go to work, I clean house. I got all kinds of things to do. I manage my diet. I'm doing all kinds of things. And if my schedule gets thrown off, it takes me a couple days to recover. Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen today on April Fool's Day. So I just want to say that I really enjoyed going to my NVC conference last weekend. I really wish you could have made it. You and your mom and her husband could have made it to the NVC conference. Yeah, I think it would have been a blast. I did at the conference imagine what it might be like if you and your mom were there. And those were wonderful imaginings. Those are wonderful daydreams. And so maybe you'd be interested in going next year. I will definitely be inviting you and your mom to attend next year and every subsequent year after that, because I think it would be enlightening and enjoyable. I think it might be fun for you and your mom to show up to a conference and just get a sense as to what goes on there. And I'd like to learn about your reaction to some of the ideas presented, and it sounds like a good time to me. Here's the thing. I'm interested in learning, expanding my horizons, and sharing what I've learned with others, and that's just a big part of my life. And so for me, making this offer, an invitation for you to show To sort of attend this conference to me is just second nature. And I think it's an aspect of my generosity and my sort of willingness to explore new avenues of connection with you. And one thing I really enjoyed about the conference this last weekend was the weather. It was so beautiful in Santa Barbara. I mean, it was gorgeous outside. Temperature was like the low 70s, which is just ideal. It's perfect for Santa Barbara. I mean, I didn't need a jacket, and the weather was mild, and just a perfect spring weekend. I really liked it. It's quite ideal. I kind of wish that every weekend was a little bit like that. It's almost the case that every weekend is like that for me. It's not always like that, but what's nice is the life I've built is very much, I'm actually quite satisfied with the life that I've built so far. Um, I've done a really good job honing and developing a community of friends and social contacts, and I'm actually really proud. It's quite an accomplishment, and I'm glad to know the people that I know. I'm glad to have friends that care deeply about me and are interested in my continued well-being, and I feel really lucky. And I don't know. I not only do I feel lucky, but I feel proud. I've built it over the years. Not to say that it's this huge community that's just this giant castle of people, made of thousands of others, of interested others. It's but it's a good moderate size, and I don't know. I appreciate it. It's nice. What's also cool is that some of my friends will be going to a music festival not next week, but the week after. So I get to look forward to going to Lucidity Music Festival in 2 weeks, and so that's cool. That's going to be 3 days of dancing and EDM, electronic dance music, and hanging out with people, and so that's gonna be fun. 3 days, man. And oh, guess what? I'm gonna have a day off on Friday that weekend too. So yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I'm excited about that too. It'll be nice to sort of connect with other friends that I've got who are interested in music and dancing. So that's cool. I really have high expectations for this summer. It's going to be pretty amazing. And I can't wait to get my braces off. And I have a feeling that I'll get them off maybe tomorrow. I think I've got an orthodontist appointment tomorrow. And maybe I'll get my braces off. And if it's not this month, maybe it'll be next month. I think I'm getting really close. And so I'm really thankful about that. I'm really wanting this to be over. And part of the reason is because I want to eat fruit like a madman. That's right. I want to bite into an apple without fear. I want to bite into pears, bite into peaches and nectarines. I want to bite into papayas and pineapples. I guess I can do that, but there's some crunchy fruit out there that I want to get access to. I also want to get more access to nuts, I guess. Yeah. I think it's especially, I want to get interested. I want to get into hand fruits again more seriously. I mean, I can eat hand fruit, some of the softer hand fruits like fresh fresh pears I could definitely get into. I just can't get into the firmer pears. Yeah, it, it's not a big deal, I guess. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for my braces to come off, and it'll be good. This is going to be a pretty awesome summer. So I wonder if there's anything more. Let's see. Maybe there are other ideas that are interesting. Um, what I want to do is somehow I want to go over these notes and sort of consolidate them and distill them into ideas that are useful. I like this point that they made, that nobody enjoys being demanded of. You know, adults don't enjoy demands. Children don't enjoy demands. And I think our culture really does focus on demanding things of people, and I think it probably over focuses on that. I think lately there's been a lot of change in our culture, sort of allowing different approaches to problems. And I'm really glad about that. That's been a real relief, at least in America. And maybe even I'd call it Western civilization. There's been, I think, some relief from sort of Victorian rule following, or what I'd call maybe religious rule following. And people are thinking twice about why we do the things we do. And, marijuana is a good example. And also homosexuality, the acceptance of homosexuality. People gave it some thought and recognized, hey, this stuff isn't as bad as we've been told, and we're just not going to follow the rules because they're rules, because rules seem rather arbitrary. And I'm glad society's doing that. I have a feeling it's doing that for a lot of other things too. Like there was also mixed race marriages. That was a big deal, I guess, during the 70s or 80s. Nowadays, no big deal, right? It's been a good 20, 30, 40 years, maybe even 50 years since society became more accepting of that kind of partnership. And I'm noticing that it's happening more and more often. These kinds of out groups are becoming more mainstream, and we're just becoming a lot more thoughtful and conscious of it. I know we've had sort of equality under the law for both genders, or both sexes here in the United States for a while, right? And there are other countries around the world, like Saudi Arabia, where that's becoming more and more the norm. And I'm really encouraged to see those trends. I mean, even though we've sort of done a really good job, there's definitely more work that needs to be done in that area. Oh, this whole gender pole ideas, where there's like this bipolar gender construct. Now we're thinking more in terms of gender fluidity, and this gives everyone a lot more flexibility in how they live their lives. And I'm a total advocate for that, because my role as a man can be expanded into areas that as I've never contemplated before. And the same is true for women. Their influence and sphere of influences can now extend even to, say, military service, to being a doctor. Of course, a lot of this has been the case for a while, but it's still working itself out in our culture. And I love this extra freedom. Men, for example, are wearing floral shirts. It's affecting men's fashion, which I have a feeling, Emily, that you're paying attention to. Not men's fashion in particular, but just fashion in general between men and women as you're sort of growing up and getting a little more fashion conscious. Although when you were a kid, you were super duper fashion conscious. In fact, you were more fashion conscious than I've seen, and loving it. You were fashion conscious and loving it. You know, the dresses you loved and the costumes you loved. And I remember you being focused on umbrellas. And oh my gosh, you were so adorable. You know, every time I think about that, I fall in love with you again, you know, as your father. You know, I think of little episodes in the past that I cherish so much as you were growing up. It's like, wow, what a neat kid, you know? Ah, I can only imagine how you've grown and developed today. You know, I could only imagine how neat you are, and I can't wait to meet you again. And you know, I'm thrilled. Everything I learn about you, I'm always thrilled about having learned it. You know, this new factoid that maybe in your mind seems mundane, like the fact that you make bread at the beginning every weekend to support your making sandwiches during the week. To me, that's like, that's totally cool. I mean, that's totally awesome. That's my daughter that's doing that. You know, I get a sense of, you know, pride, a little jolt of pride that, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And I don't know, it's awesome. You know, it's kind of funny. As your father, I see the beauty in your actions all the time. In fact, I might even see beauty in places where you don't see it, where you don't notice. And I'm really happy to pass along sort of these recognitions that I have about just how wonderful they are, especially if you might be unsuspecting about how wonderful those things are. So I think that that's a unique, that my perspective is a unique benefit that you can gain. You know, like, oh yeah, you know, sort of, there might be this extra added recognition that I can bring to your life. You know, if my observations, you know, they might be helpful in helping you sort of, I don't know, understand your life more fully. That's a benefit that I can bring to you. So I don't know, you know, it's just, I'm just, my life is moving along. Thankfully, I'm happy and healthy. You know, it's kind of funny. Lately, I've been making some changes to my diet, and I have a feeling that they're not going to stick. There's some changes I've been making lately, like eating more protein during my meals, and I've been trying this intermittent fasting idea of fasting for 16 hours and eating for 8 hours, um, or the subsequent 8 hours. The 16/8 schedule of intermittent fasting. You know, fact is, that's kind of hard to do. I'm finding that challenging. Um, so there's another thing. Oh yeah, I was trying to eat low fat vegan there for a while. I think I'm going to stick with that. The high protein veganism, you know, we'll see how much that sticks. I think there's going to be a natural stickiness of the high protein veganism idea. Fact is, because TVP is such an awesome protein to use on a daily basis, it's just awesome. It's really useful. It's a really useful food. And, you know, this idea of intermittent fasting just may be a little bit too structured for me. Um, I don't know. We'll see how intermittent fasting goes. The low fat veganism is right up my alley. I really like low fat veganism. Thing is, though, I'm going to really have a tough time letting go of nuts because I'm a big lover of peanut butter. What can I do? What can I do? I don't know. I'll have to reconsider. I'll have to consider how I deal with fats in my diet. It's actually really easy to eat a low fat diet as a vegan because a lot of the foods that a person eats as a vegan have no fat in them at all, like pasta and beans and rice and veggies and carbs like potatoes, sweet potatoes, fruits. I mean, all those things I talked about, basically no fat. You only start getting into fat when you start thinking more about avocados and nuts and like cooking, like uh, frying oils, things like that. The fact is, I don't eat olives that often. I don't eat avocados that often. I used to eat avocados all the time, but I'm not that much of a fan of avocados because they just don't have flavor. They're more of a texture. Avocados are more of a textured food, and you kind of have to like the texture of avocados anyway. They're sort of a avocados are such a light flavor. They almost taste like nothing. You have to, if you want to get any flavor out of an avocado, you almost have to salt it or spice it up with some kind of spice blend. Now, nuts, on the other hand, they do have flavors. Cashews, for example, I think are particularly well flavored nuts. Peanuts are particularly well flavored. Less well flavored nuts, well, walnuts, they can be bitter sometimes if they're not properly prepared. Also, almonds. Well, first of all, almonds taste great. By the way, they're also quite a very mild flavor. I used to eat tons and tons of almonds. I don't know. I have this feeling that for me now, nuts are going to be less and less, are going to play less of a factor in my diet. I think that if I'm going to eat nuts, it's going to be mainly peanuts. And I think that peanuts don't even qualify as nuts as much as they qualify as peas. Isn't that the case? Aren't they like peas? I don't know. Oh, or are they beans? Like bean pods? I don't know. Anyway, as a vegan, it's easy to be a low fat vegan. It's not hard. And here's the thing: soy is not all that it's cracked up to be. I'm not a big fan of soy, the flavor of a block of soy. In fact, it's for me, it's a little bit repellent now. I just don't care for the flavor. I love soy milk. Somehow they've managed to make soy milk taste good. you know, it Soy milk is great. I love soy milk, almond milk, cashew milk. They're all great milks. Um, and I actually like edamame raw soybeans. It's really good, particularly with salt. But the blocks of tofu, I just can't get into unless it's fried or flavored somehow to hide the flavor of tofu. Some soy products I really like. Like I like soy sauce a lot, but soy sauce makes my blood pressure it's just so not good for my blood pressure. And it's not just that, it's what it's really not good for is me retaining weight. I just get so bloated when I eat soy sauce of any type or uh um what is the other um soy sauce variety? It's called turmin, tarmini or something like that. Turmin. Oh, I forget the soy sauce. Um, there's another variety of soy sauce that I'm not finding the name of right now, but it also has an effect for me. I just retain weight so easily on it. Now there is an antidote, I guess, and that's celery. Diuretic vegetables, and those are fun to play around with. Plus, celery tastes great anyway. So anyway, I guess I'm not going so very far on this review of my NVC meeting. I do want to go through this material again. Just review it, make sure it gets cemented in my mind. Let's see, what's going on in your world? Well, your spring break is coming up, I guess next month, right? Oh no, it's middle April. So that might be fun. I'd be open to getting together there or connecting in some way, whether it's on the phone or video teleconference or something like that. That would be awesome. Um, and if not, hey, that's okay too. Um, I'm gonna see what I can do to maybe possibly go to a triathlon event this summer. I have an interest in sort of finding a bike, buying a bike this summer. That sounds like a lot of fun. There, though, I want to balance that desire with another desire, and that is to save more money for retirement and pay down my education loan, my student loan. So those two values are going to be sort of working opposite of one another this summer. I do want to do a better job of saving money in the future and paying down my student loan. So I'm not quite sure how that's all going to work out. We'll see. I've got to still make plans for my trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico coming up in May, which is just next month. And so I need to start scheduling up meetings and appointments and lodging for when I show up in Albuquerque. I'm going to be traveling for about a week there and spending time with family. So that's going to be fun and interesting. Be able to see them and check them out and see how the fam is doing, right? It's always nice to touch base with them and see what's going on in their worlds, see how things are changing over in New Mexico. I think they got a lot of water last winter in New Mexico, so that's good. It'll be nice to see New Mexico, particularly like Taos and Albuquerque, with a little more water. And then I've got my high school reunion coming up in August. Yeah, in fact, I've got to buy the tickets. I've got to buy my airplane tickets to get out there. So it's going to be an active summer. There's also another initiative that I've got going in my mind that's developing and is becoming more and more important to me, and that is reading. I'm finding that for me, reading is going to be a just an essential part of my summer. How I spend my downtime. This whole surfing the internet and being on the computer and watching movies all the time, I think is just not for me. I'm going to be spending a lot more time reading my Kindle, in fact. And I think I want to be doing that a lot more. I think reading is going to become a bigger part of my life this summer. And so that's something I'm really considering. I'm already reading about an hour every day, and yeah, that's becoming critical. In fact, I'm gonna do some reading right now. So I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna do 30 minutes of reading, and I'll talk to you later, right? I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for showing up. clicking the link and sharing some quality time with me together. I realized actually that I've got two love languages that I really focus on that are really important to me: quality time and words of affirmation. If you have any, if you ever have an interest in showing love to me, quality time and words of affirmation go a long way in terms of the way that I like receiving love. So I just thought I'd let you know about that little factoid. I'm getting an idea about how the way that you like to receive love, and I think it might be words of affirmation and gift giving. And maybe you can let me know if these guesses are right about how you like to receive love. Words of affirmation and gift giving. So if it's anything different than that, if it's like acts of service or quality time, let me know. But I think that you're a big fan of gifts and words of affirmation. And what's the great thing about that fact is that we can create and sustain a relationship over a great distance because you are so responsive to words of affirmation and gifts, because I, as your dad, can offer those to you at a distance. So is that great? Oh my gosh, I just realized that that's a real benefit that we can share together and celebrate together in our relationship. Ooh, that's good news. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day today and a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye. I love you.